Hey everyone. All right. So we all want to be successful, right? And honestly, there is no reason not to. But a lot of people struggle to find success, largely because of the fact that we define success collectively as a society. And since comparing qualities is so much harder than quantities, the majority of people think to measure success by factors that can be expressed in numbers. Thinking in numbers, though, leads to the inevitable conclusion that more is always better. And that's the system how economics are rated. And it works. An action that increases, let's say, a profit by 1% has a lot more impact on a company that has 100-fold more revenue than, let's say, another. The bigger the venture, the greater the leverage. That's what we call scaling. It works best for ventures that are able to experience exponential growth. That means, for example, that a software as a service company, let's say, adds a new support member that can then serve 100 or maybe 1,000 new clients. That means the bigger the volume, the bigger the leverage, and the bigger the return in the end. But let's talk creative industries. Probably everyone in here works in the creative industries in one way or another, I guess. So what we do is we gather ideas, we throw them around, we play with them, we laugh, we get frustrated a lot. But in the end, we live for this one moment where creation hits peak and you have this amazing product that sees the daylight. But we are a service industry. Let's not forget that. The creative process is not really meant to be optimized. So we have no real leverage in that sense. Leverage in our industry, unfortunately, means that either employees work too much and are paid too little, or clients maybe paid too much or more they would have to. In lots of cases, it's unfortunately even both. So it's absolutely a blessing to being able to afford to have certain positions in-house, let's say like a 3D artist. But it also means that you have to find enough work for that person, but also not too much because it's just one person. So also in a nutshell, scaling up a creative business is not just the means of just hiring a couple of new designers to work on the projects you freshly acquired. So at some point, you need dedicated staff for bookkeeping, with the insane paperwork that comes in. You need someone in charge of managing human resources, contracts, traveling, tracking expenses, all that type of stuff. So everyone also loves this idea of having the super big, cool office that houses all that talent. But people seem to forget that it also means that you have to solve not so fancy problems, like cleaning routines, like coffee machines, like dedicated office managers that actually run the space. You might need to comply with governmental compliance, data issues, all that stuff, very far away from the actual creative work. And then you start building everything in processes to keep up with this complexity and fluctuation that you basically just created. And sooner than you think, you're completely disconnected from actually what drew you to this creative industry, to this beautiful industry, the creation, the ideas, the bringing things to life, the solving problems by thinking outside of the box, that stuff that we actually love to do. And that's basically what happened to me. So together with 3 like-minded colleagues, I will call them even friends, I founded an interactive agency roughly 6 years ago, with the simple intent to produce exceptional work, something that we're proud of, something we have fun doing. And our mindset was quite contagious, and it brought us many amazing experiences with, for example, the Google Creative Lab or Дэвид Линч, people that trusted us in the process. And it really was a fun journey and worked out for us. And over the next 4 years, everything that my goal was with this agency, all the accolades that I ever dreamt of became reality. And then we were hit by the question, what's next? What's the next goal? What are we steering towards to? And the obvious answer was scale things up. The aforementioned cycle began, and I found myself in a position where I was doing every day not really the things that I love to do, and keeping business in operation was draining mentally but also physically. And counting working hours was not really a thing because at some point you don't really separate from work anyway anymore. So the company is, up to this day, by the way, in a really, really great shape, and it's operating nicely and working really well. But now the tricky question is, did I find myself, for my very self, did I find myself more successful? Did I live a better life through growing a company? I laid things out a little bit to get a clear view on things and to respond to myself. And completely non-scientifically, I came up with 6 values that I think are very important in your everyday life, also in conjunction with your working life. So the first thing is time. How much time are you willing to spend on things that you have to do, what we usually call work? Some people value free time a lot more than others. Some people love the crunch, some people love the hustle, the getting things done, the being stressed, and others can't really get any work done, barely, when under pressure. Second factor is money. How important to you is financial compensation and optimization of your time compared to money? So in our capitalist world, money informs a lot of things in our lives, obviously. And there was a recent Harvard study of millennials where 80% of them stated that the most important life goal they had was actually getting rich. But money is not everything, and a lot of people will tell you that other things are more worth than actual cash. So I'm trying to lay out here that for all of these values, there's no clear answer. There's no right and no wrong, really. The third value I found is joy. How important is it to you that for the things that you have to do, again, for your work life, that actually enjoy them? So, for example, I talked to a salesman who would actually tell me that if he would experience joy while selling things, he would sell less. And that's not of importance for him. Other people actually would rate their previous employers by how much fun they had at the office. So again, it differs a lot. The fourth one I would say is recognition. So how important for you is it that your work is recognized? In that same Harvard study, 50% of millennials ranked that being famous is one of their major life goals. So a sign painter, for example, might tell you the exact opposite. He doesn't care who recognizes him or not. He just wants to work on his craft. The fifth one would be fulfillment. How important for you is the impact of the work that you do? There are some people that need their work to be of purpose, to have like a positive impact on society. Others simply don't care at all. And last but not least, it's freedom. How important is it to you that you can choose how and what to work on every day? An artist, for example, would frown upon a request if you tell him how to get the work done. But then let's say a backend developer might be totally fine with having very strict coding guidelines. So to put this into perspective, I drew a graph of how I felt when I started the agency. I didn't really care about money at all, as long as I could pay my bills. And I was willing to sit until 2 a.m. in the morning to jam with my 3 colleagues on pumping out stuff we're proud of, and not on work that just had to be done. So we really specifically wanted to work on certain projects and have fun doing it. And as it turns out, I was exactly at the spot where I should have been at this stage in my life. And then after these 5 years, I drew the graph again. And whilst my thirst for admiration almost completely dried out and money still wasn't really that big of a deal, time and joy ranked up immensely. So I certainly changed over time. And I certainly believe that everyone does, multiple times in their lives. So I took a look if my current position as a managing partner in a growing company is really what I should be doing. Is it the work lifestyle that I want to live? So the answer, as you can think, was a resounding no. So I just call it a day. I sold my shares to my fellow partners, and I scaled my life down again to just being myself and nothing else. So you can talk of this, if you want, like a big failure. You could say I very suddenly gave up building and growing something bigger than myself that was actually working really well, in exchange for a future where my work doesn't really add up to any meaningful bigger picture. So that sounds actually quite sad. So out of this decision, in hindsight, what were the implications? Being a one-man show means you have very limited workload capacity. You can't work on that many things anymore compared to when you're an 18-people agency. But it also means that there's not much capacity to fill in the first place. That means, in return, that there's a big freedom in choosing what to work on because you don't have to work that much. So I'm right now really blessed to pretty much exclusively work on projects that I sincerely enjoy working on, which I could not have said at scale. Then, since the amount of employees I have on my payroll every month is just one person, myself, right? And there's actually zero overhead whatsoever, with the exception of tax. Like, every money that comes in is money on your very personal bank account, which is also something very nice. And as it turns out, it doesn't mean that you earn less just because you scale your business down. In my case, I actually earn now more on a monthly basis than as a managing partner. So don't take that for granted. I don't think scaling necessarily scales your personal money as well. It's just growth and volume. Then working in big teams means complex production cycles, means it's fairly likely everyone banks on each other, not everything runs smoothly all the time. There's a natural inefficiency when a lot of people work at the same time. That leads to lots of hours, that leads to lots of keep things running, keep things operating. And for me, not having to run this huge apparatus anymore, but just managing my own time, makes me actually having a, you could say, boring 9-to-5 job. I haven't worked on the weekends for 2 years straight, which means I have plenty of time now for other passions, traveling, food, culture, art, whatever, which in return leads to my personal health being in a very much better spot when compared to before. So I'm leaving this here. Long story short, I've never felt better. I never had a more healthy, more joyful, and I think a more successful life that I could ever dream of. It's very important, don't get me wrong, that there are people that push for more, that do these growing things, but I just want you to not believe the myth that it's the only way of defining your personal success. Be reflective, find your sweet spot. Bigger is not necessarily always better, by all means. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Thomas. Wait for a while. I have a few questions for you. So here in Russia, in the last 2 months, we have a lot of talks about 4 days work week. Mm-hmm. So the government is thinking about making all people working only 4 days in a week instead of 5. What do you think about it? For how many hours usually do your employees in your agency work? Mm-hmm. Tell something about your experience.
So I think I made the observation that especially at agencies, it's not that easy to afford that. I think if you're in a relaxed setting, if let's say you're at a startup, if you're at a product where you have a very linear way of working, I think this might be absolutely applicable, and I think you can get more work done in shorter time when it's time well spent and you're more balanced in your life. But I think in an agency context, it's very often short-cycled, things happen on the fly, unexpected things. I think I haven't seen so far any really good working agency that could pull that off, to be honest.
Okay. And for how many hours do your employees usually work a day?
What do you mean?
How many hours your employees work a day? What is the length of the work day? 8 hours, 7?
Yeah, so I guess it depends on your job title, right? I think the higher you get, the less you can afford to look at hours anyway. Mm. As soon as you're like at a managing position or like a creative director position, you just stay as long as it's necessary. So sometimes I think people just go earlier, sometimes people leave later. I wouldn't say there's a strict like timesheet kind of lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much. Do you have any questions to Thomas? Yes, please.
Thank you for your speech. It really resembles to the values I have personally, and I have the same system. I have 3 points, not 6. Mm-hmm. Fun, fame, and money. So it pretty like yours. Mm-hmm. And I applied to the studio I ran, and honestly, I don't always understand to what I should focus on as we started just a year ago. Mm-hmm. Should we focus on fun because we have to? No, we don't have to. We want to live the life we like, so we want to have some fun. But on the start, it's really important to have a lot of, not a lot of, but some. You don't hear me, right?
Talk directly. I don't understand everything.
Okay. Is it better? Huh? Okay. So, to what should young studio focus on? On money, on fame, or on money? Thanks.
Yeah. No. It's very much up to you, I think. I don't think there can be a definitive answer. I think you have to think about, especially if you're working with other people together, to make a very clear decision for yourself. I think it's not about putting a company in the focus, but the human beings that run that company. So if you guys feel like you want to push for something, you want to get awards, you want to get recognized, you want to go for it, then do it. You know, if you feel like you want that balance, you're at a point in your life where you feel like it's not really about that rush anymore, you don't want that crunch and that heavy working hours, then don't do it. So it's very much about being reflective to yourself and your fellow partners, but I don't think there can be a recipe for success.
Okay, thank you very much, Thomas.